But progress does not look like a bunch of Instagram and Twitter videos that, frankly, tell not even half of the story. What I have seen over the last couple days does not seem like the behavior of someone responsible for the things a governor is responsible for. And so, if nothing else, I hope that maybe the governor will listen to some of the stories, understand the impact, maybe actually, understand how this issue is impacting other communities. And so Tulsa's not just a target, but Tulsa's part of a broader solution. I guarantee you, if anybody in this room were to reach out to someone who's an expert in the field and they asked, what should cities be doing to end homelessness in their community, you are going to hear they ought to be doing things like the Safe Move initiative. You will hear that if you're going to decommission campus, this is the way that you do it. You do it the way that we've done it with our law enforcement community, with the fire department, with mental health providers, with housing solutions, with folks who are actually going to be there to ensure that people can get to places to improve their lives. That's how we do it here. That's different than maybe how it's thought about in the state of Oklahoma. And I will just say there's been a lot of folks that have asked me about the political side of this, the partisan side of this. And one thing I'll double down on is that you don't just have to ask me. I saw comments from Sheriff Regalado, who's Republican. He said you can't incarcerate your way out of this problem. I've talked to a number of my former colleagues in the legislature who all agree. If you go back and look what states like Utah have done, Republican governor, Republican legislature invested $66 million into homelessness because they understand that root causes matter. Not for nothing, the Tulsa Chamber will be going to Salt Lake City to see how Salt Lake City has had so much success. One of the things they will learn is they met the moment on this issue with resources, with best practices that address root cause issues, and for those reasons, a community of business leaders from Tulsa will be going to Utah to understand how do you get there on this issue and so many others. With that, I'm happy to take any questions anybody has. I'm sure maybe there's a couple.
Has the governor's office reached out to you since Operation Safe began?
No, they have not. And I know for sure the governor has my cell phone number.
The governor just told Fox 23 that the mayor's housing plan cannot keep up with the inflow of homeless people coming into Tulsa. Do you believe homelessness has gotten worse because people are sent to be busing those who are experiencing homelessness?
So I'll tell you, the year before I got elected, homelessness grew by 23% in Tulsa. This year it grew by 4%. So if the governor says that my policies won't keep up with people coming in, I would remind him that before December the 2nd, they weren't my policies and they got worse. However, he was the governor, and so maybe it was some of his policies that couldn't keep up with the inflow of folks who are homeless. I feel like we've gotten to a place where we've been able to see it plateau, which is actually a trend across the country, so I won't take credit for that necessarily, but it puts us in a position to bring best practice solutions to decrease it and eventually end it. And so, for some reason, I think he might be under the illusion that homelessness in Oklahoma, homelessness in Tulsa started on December the 2nd of 2024. I think anybody can probably go back and do the research and they'll find it started a little bit before that. And if we don't all come together to address it in sustainable ways, it's only going to get worse, and the impact to citizens is going to get worse. And so that's what we're really focused on right now. So, the governor saying my policies won't keep up, it's not actually backed up in the facts and the numbers. But this is all about taking accountability. I will tell you, do I think that homelessness in Tulsa is my fault? No, but it is my responsibility. And I am holding myself accountable for getting us to a better spot. I am holding myself accountable to ending homelessness by 2030, and that means we have to start now. That's different than a leader who's simply talking about somebody else's policies, who's only been in office in 10 months, not taking any accountability, and frankly, wanting us to applaud him, just clean up the right-of-ways for which the state's always been responsible for. The state's always been responsible for those areas. We've done a lot of cleanups in those areas before, but that's always been the state's responsibility. I said it earlier today. when I was on the radio. It is almost like when I was younger and my mom told me to clean my room, and I didn't do it immediately, and I waited for a long, long time to get it done. I finally got it done, usually on Mother's Day because that was my gift to her, and I wanted her to celebrate me for cleaning up my room. I don't think it's time to celebrate for simply cleaning up your room, and certainly doing it in a way that's caused a lot of chaos in the city because of the lack of coordination.
You know, when you and the governor spoke on the phone initially, was there kind of a debate? Was it just an exchange of wish lists? Like, where are you guys disagreeing, I guess?
Well, you know, I don't think that on the phone we had a lot of disagreement on this issue. You know, I'm a big believer that if you got something to say to somebody, you say it to them when you're on the phone with them, or you say it to their face. You don't say, oh, yeah, you know, a bunch of niceties and go on. We did have a spirited debate on tribal issues, but that was separate from the conversation around homelessness. I walked away, and I don't know if I said it at the time, but I walked away somewhat encouraged. That's why I was so surprised to see the rhetoric from the governor and all the videos about Tulsa. And I was confused because of the conversation. I was confused because the data doesn't back it up. I was confused because crime is actually down in all categories. We got our challenges, but I was confused because somehow, some way, it wasn't until August of this year that the governor realized that homeless folks were in the state of Oklahoma. And it wasn't until August of this year that the governor realized that they only were here in Tulsa. But that's not backed up by anything else. So I thought we had a great conversation. The governor left a few things out of that conversation, and I think you can understand why he may have left them out, because I don't think that my guess is he probably would have guessed I wouldn't appreciate it. But I think if we're going to solve problems together, you can't lie to people on the phone.
Right here and then Elizabeth. Right.
How long do you expect Operation Safe to continue?
I don't know. I've not talked to him. He's not talked to me. What I can say is, I think there's a whole bunch of people who work for OHP who were trained in one of the best law enforcement agencies in the entire country on how to keep people safe on the highways. We were told they can't do the highways anymore. We were told they couldn't be in Tulsa. Now they're cleaning up trash and that kind of stuff. And all those things are important. But I think about the wasted resources on that standpoint. I can't imagine that there's anybody in that agency that, if they could be honest, would say this is something that they should be doing, is my guess. I imagine if I went and talked to my former colleagues in the legislature, they would probably say this is not something that we should be doing without coordination from the city. Again, we are the one city where that is true. So I have no clue how long it's gonna last. I hope, frankly, that even in the midst of all this disagreement, that if it's going to persist for a while, that maybe somebody from the governor's office or the highway patrol is willing to pick up the phone and have a conversation with us about how we do it better together and how we maybe pull back and make sure we're serving people. As I understood it, and I've not obviously been in encampment when OHP showed up. What I understand, though, is that people are given an option for jail or to move. Well, nobody's been taken to jail, and there's no confirmation from OHP that they've actually connected anybody to a service. So I just don't really feel like that in and of itself is sustainable. Citizens of the city are going to feel the impact of that in negative ways if it persists for too long. And I know the deal's going to be, oh, well, the city can't handle it. This is somewhat of a manufactured crisis by doing without coordination with the city. And so my great hope is that it doesn't last long going down the road that's going right now.
Well, so it's kind of, my question was, do you think it's backlash to working with tribes, which you kind of addressed that, but it's definitely an echo of what we're seeing in DC. So how does it parallel with, Trump, and are you worried about, you're about as democratic as they come in Oklahoma? Do you think you're going to continue to be a target?
I don't know. I mean, that's the decision of the governor. Look, I was in the legislature for 8 years, and 81 of my colleagues in the House when I left were Republican, and I worked fine with them. There are certainly disagreements that we have, but I was always invested in doing what I could to make Oklahoma a better state. I thought when I got elected mayor, I'd have a governor who was only invested in making sure Tulsa was a successful city. I wouldn't have guessed that any sort of political overhang from D.C. or anything like that would factor into that equation. End of the day, we're all Oklahomans. And my hope is that we can return back to that. So I don't wake up thinking about that too much. It's not a reality that I want to live in. But one thing I will say is no matter how much we are attacked, if we're doing the right thing, which by every measure we are doing the right thing, I'm fine with the attacks. I don't have the luxury of playing the political game. When you're in local government, you just got to take care of things. And so when it was OHP was leaving, we got to figure out how to take care of it. When it's the governor causing all this chaos right now, we got to take care of it. We wake up, we take care of things, and don't worry too much about anybody's political aspirations, of which I am told the governor has some. I think the best way to maybe go to Iowa as a presidential candidate is not to talk about how you stuck it to the Democratic mayor in Tulsa, but to talk about how you got your state off the bottom of every list that's out there. I mean, if you Google right now where we are in education, you'd probably guess we were near the bottom or something like that. And health outcomes, you'd probably guess we were near the bottom. Mental health, you'd probably guess we're near the bottom. And economic opportunity, you probably guess we're near at the bottom. What does all that ladder up to? It ladders up to homelessness growing in your state over the 7 years you've been governor. I think that's going to be a really hard case to make in Iowa.
Here and then Randy and the Mayor, do you think that some of these facilities are equipped enough to handle possibly an influx of people now that?
No, this is the deal. This has been part of the conversation that's been there from the start. And I understand that when the governor met with, some number of business leaders here, even he acknowledged that he needed somewhere for people to go in that conversation. He was told over and over again, we are at over 100% capacity in shelters all across this community, something we know. We've had to meet winter storms. We've had to meet all these needs since I've been in office. He moved forward anyway. So he was aware that we didn't have space. This is not something he didn't know. He was aware of it, which is the reason why I'm guessing they decided not to transport people. And they just told people to kind of scram because they understood there was no place for people to go. I will say in the conversation I had with him, I very specifically asked for his help in unlocking additional capacity at the Be Heard site, something that he very conveniently maybe forgot about. But it's the reason why Safe Move is committed to doing this in a responsible way, housing 300 people in the next 12 months. It is the reason why we're investing ourselves in affordable housing. It is the reason why we're keeping such a close and tight relationship with our shelter providers. It is all in service of making sure that, yes, we can address the issue of street homelessness and encampments in a responsible way. That takes a little bit of time, but it also mitigates any impact that we have to citizens in this community while also promoting a more compassionate and effective response to those who are unhoused.
Randy, Burton, and Kim, and then we have time for one after that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Sorry, Randy.
I'm hiding behind the TV guy.
Yeah, man.
So, the governor says this is all about public safety.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering, in the short time frame we have here, has this had any impact on any of the city services?
Absolutely. So one thing I will say, just to start on the premise of that question, and want to reiterate, crime is down in every category, even from last year in the city. And I think that's really important to note. But I have heard that not only has this driven up the number of folks showing up to emergency rooms at Hillcrest in particular, and probably the other hospital systems around town. There was also an issue when this started. It was First Friday, and it was like, hey, go downtown for services. And so we had a number of people who were downtown. So certainly has had a public safety impact where we've had a lot of people. You've been down the First Friday before. You know how many people are downtown. And you're saying, hey, we just very loudly interrupted your life, took everything from you, but go downtown. Well, what condition do you think somebody shows up downtown in? But is the, fortunately, I mean, again, this goes to a lot of the hard work that we've been doing over time. Our second ART team had been stood up, and we're downtown to help address some of those issues. I think it goes to what I said before. We understand that certain people are going to play politics with different things, but if we continue to do the things that we've been invested in, we can continue to meet the need. But it is having a dramatic impact on public safety. I mean, if you imagine where some folks were, maybe in encampments that were kind of off the beaten path in some ways and that kind of stuff, to have that interrupted and told, hey, how about you go into the economic center of the city to get served? Well, that's going to have a significant impact because people are in crisis mode. It's almost the same as if your house burned down and somebody just said, well, go walk down the street and figure it out. I mean, that's kind of what has happened, and word's getting around. The other thing that's really tough from a public safety standpoint is there is some undermining of the relationship that a lot of folks around house have been able to develop with law enforcement, seeing law enforcement as a place of help and support, because TPD and the fire department have been hand in hand and shoulder to shoulder with service providers for folks who have not really committed any crime, but folks we want to get to a better situation. This has not helped that either. And the fact that nobody has gone to jail to this point, I think suggests that there hasn't been a whole bunch of hardened criminals that have had their lives turned upside down. But folks who, because this is a problem all across the country, it's certainly a problem here, folks who just are having a hard time getting by, yeah, it's going to have a dramatic impact on public safety. But we stand ready to meet the need.
Bert, Kim, and then Nehemiah, and that's it.
Mac Haltom of the Day Center said he thinks Operation Safe is simply going to shift people from the highway embankment
That's right.
to downtown, to private properties. Is that what you're seeing? Where are these people going? And do you have an idea of how many people have been displaced?
I don't know how many people have been displaced. When I talk about the lack of coordination, it also means that we don't know where they're going. When I say them, where's OHP going to, break up an encampment? So I have no idea on numbers. It's kind of hard to serve some of those folks once they've had that happen. People are losing IDs and paperwork and all that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, I mean, naturally, it's going to force people into the core of the city for a lot of reasons. That's where a lot of the services are: Iron Gate, Day Center, Salvation Army, John 3:16, all downtown. But also, if you are kind of looking for places where you might ask people for help or support, you're probably going to go where people are. So we did have an uptick in folks downtown who wouldn't have normally really been down there. We have seen an uptick in people kind of going to shelters to seek out things, but capacity is capacity, man. So showing up to a shelter to ask for help, is just asking for help, man. It may or may not be there for you. And I think this is a good opportunity, though, just to show my appreciation for those folks who are at the Day Center, who are at these organizations, who have really worked hard to try to meet a need that they, frankly, cannot meet right now, just because of capacity issues and so on and so forth. And so I do think that Tulsans can maybe brace themselves a little bit for maybe a wave of difficulty of folks who are in crisis mode, who might show up in places where they didn't normally show up at levels that they maybe shouldn't have. But to be clear, this is kind of a manufactured crisis. And again, we're gonna meet the needs as best we can. But you nailed it. You can guess where people are gonna go if you tear up their stuff and all that kind of stuff. They're gonna follow the lights and the action, and that's gonna have an impact.
Moving forward, just a few weeks, few months, long-term plan, what do you have as far as more immediate actions when you and roll out of your plan?
Well, I mean, I think immediate actions are things we've already been doing. I mentioned, like, we have already. I think there was even a story on one of the news stations on our teams that go out all the time, or are going to help decommission campus, connect people to housing. That's happening all the time. The alternative response teams are out all the time. We are working every day to connect people to housing, get people the services that they need. One of the challenging things about this, though, is it does take some of that capacity and even puts the system in kind of crisis mode. So we've had a lot of conversations in the last several days about making sure that we're disciplined and doing the things that we know we have to do to get people onto a better spot. I mentioned the numbers: a 23% increase before I got here, a 4% increase in the current year. We have an opportunity to drive it down dramatically now because we're taking more directed action. And so for me, it's continuing to do that. The $6 million in the system is going to help. So once that is fully implemented, you'll start to see, I mean, the goal was 9-12 months, 300 people off the streets. That is still the goal. If you think about our homeless population, you got 1,500 that are homeless overall. What's the number? 500 that are sleeping out on the streets that are unsheltered. We have a big opportunity to drive down those numbers significantly. And I think it should be noted by everybody that the governor didn't do this before we announced Safe Move. He did it after we announced Safe Move. So just as we got to the point where we made the investments, that the mayor's office, the city council, service providers all work together to get 300 people off the streets, I create chaos. Didn't do it in the last administration. And you say, well, it wasn't as bad then. I just told you numbers grew a whole bunch more in the last administration, not necessarily out of anybody's fault, but just the data would have suggested that if you were to think about dramatic action, a better time to do it would have been any other year in the governor's administration, but he chose this one. And he chose it as we are beginning to do what I believe is going to be our gargantuan effort to get folks off the streets in the best way possible.
Last question, EMI, and then final thoughts from you.
Yes, so what contingency plan exists if the governor continues to interfere with your projects?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a contingency. I think we got to continue to stay very focused on what we're doing. There's people's lives are on the line, and I think for us, the contingency has been a strong plan that gets people off the streets. What's difficult now is I think there's been one or two of the encampments, I'll have Emily check me later, where we had people who were connected to housing, and now we can't find them anymore. So what's going to be harder right now is the people that we've made these connections with, who we are ready to get them to a better situation that we can't find anymore. That's going to be really difficult for us. But we're going to effort it. I think there's some amazing service providers that are out there. I'm really proud of our team here in the mayor's office. I'm really proud of the partnership with the city council and all of our city employees. We're going to have to really band together with this community to get us where we need to be. I sure hope that we get state leaders to help us do that. I think we have a lot of friends in the legislature who understand the severity of the problem. I think we can look to states like Utah where the investment mattered. I think right now the state's sitting on several $1 billion where this is a drop in the bucket to address it in a way. Like, we really actually could end homelessness in Oklahoma if the state of Oklahoma decided to do so. Usually that's championed by a governor, but I certainly plan to appeal to my friends in the legislature who I think maybe have a little more reasonable set of viewpoints on how we get to a better spot. And I look forward to working with them to get us there. I think the last thing I'll say, if you know of somebody or you encounter somebody who in particularly has lost IDs and paperwork, they can get support around that at the day center. I just stopped by the day center today to donate some clothes, and I say that because there's going to be a greater need. People lost a lot of stuff. I know there's a big need for men's clothing in particular. I imagine it's clothing across the board. I had the great opportunity of cleaning out my closet yesterday. I say cleaning out. I was really just putting stuff in trash bags, giving it away, and I felt like I was cleaning, but I probably was just making sure. But these are things that we can all do, small things for sure, but impactful things. And I think the other thing about it is, I think what I want everybody to know is while this definitely is a distraction for this community, it's not fair to Tulsans that, we have a governor of the state that is trying to tell everybody across the country that we are the worst place to be because of the issue of homelessness. I want everybody in Tulsa to know that the data does, not back that up, that I continue to believe that this is the best city in the country to do just about anything. Crime is down, outside investment is up, and we are meeting our challenges head on. And we're going to continue to do that no matter who's in the governor's office. And I look forward to working with people across this community. I told the group today that these are Tulsa problems and thus must be solved by Tulsans. And anybody who doesn't want to be part of that solution, while I am disappointed, I understand, but we're not going to slow down in our effort to get to functional zero homelessness by 2030 and do all the other things necessary to make sure that folks in Tulsa can live in a safe community that is the best place to raise a family, go to school, or open a business, and live a life. Thank you guys for being here. Appreciate it.